Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Inside Winston Cup Racing. Today is the day. The 1993 NASCAR Winston Cup Championship will be decided this afternoon in the Hooters 500 at the Atlanta Motor Speedway between Dale Earnhardt and Rusty Wallace. I'm in Huntersville, North Carolina at King Racing. This is Kenny Bernstein's place where they build and maintain the Quaker State Fords, which are driven by Brett Bodine in the NASCAR Winston Cup Series. Well, the Busch Series ran yesterday in the Slick 5300 at the Atlanta Motor Speedway. Of course, that championship was decided last weekend. For an update on that race and other news, let's join Randy Pemberton live in our studios in Charlotte, North Carolina. Welcome back, Randy.
Thanks, Ned. It's good to be back. Well, yesterday's running of the Slick 5300 BGN race was a wild one. 10 caution flags slowed the action for 54 of the race's 197 laps. Ward Burton came home the winner. We'll have highlights of that event coming up, and here's what else we have in this edition of Inside Winston Cup Racing.
This is how Brett Bodine's car looked after a hard practice crash in Dover, Delaware. But medical technology and a special splint enabled him to continue competing on the track. 9 days ago, Brett had the season-saving device removed in Allentown, Pennsylvania. We'll take you along. And you'll hear from Jimmy Hensley. After a year as the circuit's best-known relief driver, Hensley now has a 3-year deal with Radius Motorsports, replacing Ted Musgrave in 1994. We'll have the story.
Inside Winston Cup Racing is brought to you by cold-filtered Miller Genuine Draft and Miller Genuine Draft Light, taking the country by storm. And by Haviland Formula 3 Motor Oil. Add more life to your car.
Nowhere is there more pressure to perform than in the final race of the season, particularly in the Busch Grand National and Winston Cup divisions of NASCAR. That proved to be true yesterday in the Slick 5300 at the Atlanta Motor Speedway as drivers were putting their cars on the edge, with some going over. Let's take a look at the highlights.
Today's Busch Series highlights brought to you by Texaco Haviland. Add more life to your car.
Mark Martin led the throng of 42 cars to the green flag of the final Busch Grand National race of 1993. For most, the Slick 5300 proved to be a last chance race, a last chance to register a victory. And taking chances they did. 10 caution flags flew during the 2-hour and 40-minute affair. The first wreck on lap 5 included 5 cars. Among them, David Green, who dropped from 2nd to 3rd in the final point standings. Ward Burton, rookie Joe Bessie, Martin, and Todd Bodine battled for the top spot through the first 70 of 197 laps. Then the yellows started to fly. It was on lap 86 that Neil Bonnet banged the wall in turn 4. The hardest lick of the day went to Todd Bodine, who flattened his fiddle-faddle machine in turn 4 while running second. In fact, from lap 71 to the checkered flag, the race went no longer than 21 consecutive laps under green. Ward Burton was holding off the competition in the closing laps, but he got a little help. First, it was contender Mark Martin losing it on lap 164. Then it was Joe Bessie spinning after taking the lead on lap 184. From there on in, it was all Ward Burton as he cruised to his 3rd win of the season and 4th of his Busch Grand National career. With all those wrecks in yesterday's Slick 5300, Todd Bodine was the only driver to suffer any serious injuries. Todd was diagnosed with a broken hand and a concussion and will miss today's Hooters 500. He's being replaced by Phil Parsons in the factory stores of America Ford. The Busch cars weren't the only cars crashing at Atlanta so far this weekend. There were Winston Cup cars in the wall during practice and qualifying on Friday and Saturday. For more on that, let's go to Bill Weber.
Good morning, Randy. It's great to have you back. First, the pre-race report on the Hooters 500. In practice, Dale Earnhardt, Jeff Gordon, Dave Marcus, and Sterling Marlin all crashed and went to a backup car. Ken Schrader crashed in qualifying. He's also in his backup car this weekend. In the final practice session on Saturday, Jeff Bodine, Rick Wilson, and Ted Musgrave were involved in an incident. Jeff Bodine's team rolled out a backup car for him. Harry Gant will start on the pole here today in Atlanta. It's his first pole of the season. His qualifying run surprised a lot of people, but no one was more surprised than Harry Gant.
Yeah, it's great. We had no idea we went to pole. We've been sitting in the truck talking. Everybody come running a while ago, and I thought it was already been moved back, but all the crew done a good job, and they all congratulating us, you know, and everything. So I couldn't hardly believe it. I thought it'd be a lot quicker than that.
So now Harry Gant's farewell tour will begin with the Busch Clash in 1994. Other news in brief. Look for Jeff Burton to move to Winston Cup in 1994 with Stavola Brothers Racing. Because of contract obligations, no one could confirm that here in Atlanta, but the official announcement could come as early as Monday. Bill Davis Racing, which fields Fords for Bobby Labonte, will switch to Pontiac in 1994. That announcement in the coming weeks. Jack Roush unveiled his new sponsor for next season. It will be Family Channel on the 16 car. His new driver is Ted Musgrave, and he's looking forward to 1994.
I'll tell you, I couldn't have a better support, you know, from a TV station, you know, like the Family Channel for the racing. You know, Goodyear, Ford Motor Company, everybody involved. It's just the biggest package I've ever seen, you know, for racing. So definitely I am happy, and I just couldn't be more ecstatic right now.
Ted Musgrave had a great qualifying effort, and there were some surprises inside the top 10. Let's take a look at how they stack up. There's Harry Gant. Outside of him, Brett Bodine looking for his second career victory. Row 2, Rick Mast had the track record down there. He's looking for victory number 1, as well as Ted Musgrave. Row 3, Jimmy Spencer and Bobby Hamilton. Good qualifying efforts for them. As we go back to row 4, there's Ernie Irvin. He'll be a threat, as well as Bill Elliott today. And back to row 5, Rich Bickle. Good qualifying effort for him, as well as Lake Speed. Well, Dale Earnhardt goes off 19th today, Rusty Wallace 20th, as the two battle for the $1.2 million Winston Cup title. All Earnhardt has to do is finish 34th or better to claim his 6th crown, one shy of Richard Petty's 7 titles. We need to take a break. As we leave you, here's the rest of the starting lineup for today's Hooters 500.
Back in September at the Dover Downs International Speedway during practice, Brett Bodine had a pretty serious accident. He broke his right wrist, so doctors put a unique device instead of a cast on his right arm so that he can continue to drive these Quaker State Fords. Well, recently he went back to the hospital to have that contraption taken off, and we went along with him.
Brett Bodine's Quaker State Ford was shattered in a practice crash at Dover in September. Brett's most lingering injury was a broken bone in his right wrist. The combination of an unusual break and Brett's burning desire to continue to compete resulted in the use of a unique splint called an external fixator to immobilize the broken bone. On the Friday following the Phoenix race, Brett flew from Charlotte, North Carolina to Allentown, Pennsylvania to have the splint removed, ending 7 weeks of healing.
I had to change a lot of stuff in the race car. Lower the steering wheel down so that this was out of my eyesight, change the seat angles. Had to mess around a little bit to get myself re-acclimated to the cockpit of the race car.
How long was it before you just wanted to rip it out? I mean, you just really got tired of it.
I'd say about halfway through the deal, about 3 weeks. You know, I was just kind of sick of the fact that this was hindering my driving. It was hindering sleeping at night. Anything I wanted to do, you know, it was always in the way. But you know, then you'd have to be thankful that because of this, I was able to keep driving. You know, it would have been very easy just to have a cast on and be done for the season. And because Dr. Scarangel and his people were able to install this, you know, it kept me racing the entire season.
Brett's outpatient visit resembled a family reunion, including a warm reception from the hospital staff and gladly fulfilling a few autograph requests. In less than an hour, it was time to get down to business. The trip to surgery to have the splint removed.
There they are. It's off.
We're going this way. Yeah.
And it wasn't long before Brett was back up to speed.
It's the first autograph with the cast off.
That's it.
I got the last one.
Hey, listen, Ed, you shouldn't be up here doing this. You never bring any other patient back.
Sure I do.
No, you don't. No, you don't.
Thanks, buddy.
Good luck.
Thank you so much.
Best luck.
Were you surprised at his ability and his endurance so quickly after the surgery?
Oh, without question, without question. As I said, this was certainly an unusual circumstance for me. Patients usually aren't doing this type of an occupation or this type of an activity, and certainly not doing it as quick as Brett did, and certainly that's a tribute to Brett and his motivation. I mean, to me, it's just astounding to be able to be in that type of an accident and be not only just back in your car alone, let alone back in your car after surgery and after a device being placed on like that. And I think that's certainly a real great example to any of the patients that we have that have similar injuries and need to have similar treatment. To be able to see Brett smiling and driving and back on the track, it gives people a lot of hope and a lot of up feelings about their injury and how they're going to recover.
Brett's next stop was the sports medicine facility in Lehigh Valley, adjacent to the hospital. After signing a few more autographs, it was time to have his forearm placed in a soft cast.
It's been a long time since I've done that.
Okay, it's warm. It's not hot.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah. Not a problem. That's perfect.
You all right?
Yeah, that's perfect. Because, I mean...
If you have the sock on underneath, this goes over the top. Put some 2-inch adhesive tape around so that it's not too tight that your skin blobs out over the back end. Just make sure it's on there nice, and this isn't going to go anywhere.
Then after one last set of x-rays, it was time for a final visit with his surgeon.
So what I suspect happened is not only did you fracture through here, but you fractured right, which you did, through the joint here, and went right on down through here from the stress of your injury and tore some of the ligaments in your wrist here.
I see.
But it has fortunately held it together pretty well. This has slipped down a little bit, but we'll see how it goes. But for the most part, the fracture is healed perfectly. You can see the lines right in through here and here. It's got good bone on all sides, and it's healed really well here on the lateral as well. So that's fortuitous, because I think if you had gone just with a cast from that ligament damage, the chances are pretty good that that whole wrist would have fallen apart.
What would it turn back a little bit? Is that going to cause any?
It's going to make getting your flexion a little harder.
Okay.
And we'll have to see. We'll have to really see how it goes. I think it's going to make it a little. It's going to make your therapy a little bit more challenging for sure.
Okay.
Well, Brett, a new lease on life almost for you. How's it feel?
Oh, great. You know, I'm looking forward to getting through Atlanta, really, and then starting the therapy real heavy and, you know, try to get back to over 100% for next season.
It's amazing what race drivers will go through so they can continue to drive these race cars. And it's also amazing to me how mechanical our bodies are and what doctors can do to patch us up so we can keep going. Now, this is a brand new Quaker State Ford being built for Brett Bodine. It replaces the one that he wrecked in Dover. Right now, we need to take a short break. When we come back, we'll talk to Jimmy Hensley, and we'll also have the mailbox, so don't go away.
You know, we're really excited about it. It's at least one winter I can go through and know that I got something, you know, the following year, and, you know, that's going to make it a lot easier.
Jimmy Hensley won the Max Race Cars Rookie of the Year in the NASCAR Winston Cup Series in 1992. Well, 1993 rolled around and he didn't have a full-time ride. But he was a super sub, you might say, during the 1993 season. Didn't have a home. But that will be changing for 1994. He has been named to drive the Radius car number 55 in NASCAR Winston Cup competition. And recently we talked to Jimmy about his new ride.
We struggled over the years, you know, been doing it a long time, but hadn't really had a lot of sponsorship, you know, over the years. And, you know, it's kind of just, we'd start out the year and see, you know, if we was going to race or not race, and it's kind of been that way my whole career. So this is definitely a new trend for me, and hopefully, you know, we'll be able to handle it pretty well.
For 28 years, Jimmy Hensley has been a popular performer on racetracks across the country. Now, as we look forward to 1994, he has finally been rewarded with a ride worth waiting for, moving to the Radius Motorsports team, replacing the departing Ted Musgrave.
I was able to sign on with Ray DeWitt and the Radius team for next year, the next 3 years, really. And, you know, we're really excited about it. It's at least one winter I can go through and know that I got something, you know, the following year, and, you know, that's going to make it a lot easier.
In 1993, Hensley has become racing's sixth man, the invaluable player who can come off the bench and deliver a solid performance. Hensley was the hand-picked choice of the late Alan Kowicki to take the wheel of the 7 car following Kowicki's death in April. Hensley lost that ride when new team owner Jeff Bodine took the seat in September. Since then, he has driven for Morgan McClure Racing following the departure of Ernie Irvin, and for Richard Petty, subbing for the injured Rick Wilson. He has made a handful of appearances in the Busch Series, and through it all, the Virginia gentleman never lost his smile or his desire.
Well, I just kind of got used to it, I guess. It's tough. I mean, you think you know you probably are capable of being out here with these guys on Sunday afternoon, but it's hard to get there, and sometimes when you do get there, it's even harder to stay. So, you know, I'm really excited about this deal, you know, and hopefully we can have a good year.
In 1992, Hensley came off the bench in Martinsville to drive for Cale Yarborough Motorsports. Despite missing the first 8 events, he roared on to 4 top 10 finishes and the Rookie of the Year award. In the past, Hensley always seemed a promising candidate to grab the next Winston Cup ride. But even last year, his strong season came as a replacement driver. And Jimmy admits his laid-back approach probably hurt his earlier chances at moving into the Winston Cup ranks.
You know, a few years back, I probably should have pushed myself more to get to the Winston Cup. You know, I really can thank probably Barry Dotson when he got me to drive Team 3 car 3 or 4 years ago. And it kind of got my confidence level up. You know, we ran the car 4 times, was in top 10 twice, and you know, it really got to lit the fire back for me, and you know, kind of got me on the way. And you know, I was able. People's been real good to me to ask me to fill in for them when they need it, and then that's helped me out. And been in some tough situations, but you know, it's probably helped me out.
It may have taken 20 years for Hensley to become a regular competitor in Winston Cup, but he has been a fan favorite since his early days in racing. He is a multiple winner of the Busch Series Most Popular Driver Award and has earned the respect of his fellow drivers on the track.
You know, I just always wanted to be competitive, and I think over the years I have been. I probably should have had a little higher goals, like more aggressive or something. You know, I just always tried to race people clean and do the best on any given day that I could, and hopefully that's been good enough.
Off the track, Jimmy Hensley still holds on to his job with an oil delivery service in Virginia. Next year, he confesses he will cut back a bit to focus more energy on racing. 1994 is the year Jimmy Hensley's been waiting for. It took him a little longer than he'd hoped to get there, but looking back, he wouldn't change a thing.
You know, I got a good family, and that was number one, and you know, racing was second, you know, to me. And like I say, I've had good, you know, pretty good success. I've won a lot of races in the modified and Grand National, and you know, it's hard. I'm a family man, and I'd like to keep it that way.
I don't think there's a person in the garage area that was not happy to see Jimmy Hensley get a full-time ride, and I know there are lots of fans out there happy about it as well. We need to take a short break. When we come back, we'll have the mailbox, so don't you go away.
Hey, Rusty, looks like you're racing on Easy Street. Easy Street, Jeff. Man, this is hard work, but I'm looking forward to taking a cruise in January, and you can too by entering Miller Genuine Draft's Easy Street to the Caribbean Sweepstakes. The grand prize is a dream cruise on Norwegian Cruise Line's ship, the Dreamward, to Grand Cayman, Cozumel, Cancun, and more, with myself, Mercury recording artist Jeff Knight, and race drivers like Bobby Rahal, Kenny Wallace, and Buddy Baker. While on the cruise, you'll be presented with the keys to a brand new Bass Cat Pantera 2 boat, complete with a trailer, a Mariner outboard motor, and my new CD, Easy Street.
Additional prizes include Miller Genuine Draft racing jackets, Bass Cat fishing jackets, and Jeff Knight's new CD, Easy Street. All you have to do to enter is call 1-900-773-4TNN. Each call costs 90 cents. Entrance must be 21 years or older. You can also send a postcard with your name, address, and phone number to this address.
Enter soon and good luck.
The Hooters 500 marks the end of the 1993 racing season, but already a number of changes have been announced for next year. We'll have a look at some of the things you can look for in 1994. Joe Bessie was one of the top contenders for the Penrose Rookie of the Year award. After successfully competing in the Busch North Series, he headed south. Now he racks up as many miles off the track as on it, running his trucking company in Maine and trying to make his mark in the Busch Series.
Today's mailbox is brought to you by Miller Genuine Draft.
Our question today is from Ben Grixtus from Bradenton, Florida, who writes, how many cars do the transporters transport at a time, and do they carry enough parts to almost rebuild a car? Well, Ben, for the answer, we'll go to Gail Wilson, who's the truck driver for the McDonald's Ford number 27.
Ben, that's a good question. All the transporters carry 2 cars, enough of spare parts in all these cabinets, and the cars right above. And We carry extra front and rear bumpers and extra pieces to rebuild the cars. Thanks for riding in.
If you have any race questions, write to us at Inside Winston Cup Racing, Box 240417, Charlotte 28224. If we use your question on the air, you'll receive this embroidered Miller Genuine Draft jacket.
Well, that's all the time we have for today. Hope you enjoyed the show, and our thanks to Kenny Bernstein and all the folks for allowing us to come in the Quaker State shops today. We'll see you again here on TNN for more on Inside Winston Cup Racing.
Inside Winston Cup Racing has been brought to you by Cold-filtered Miller Genuine Draft and Miller Genuine Draft Light, taking the country by storm. And by Haviland Formula 3 Motor Oil. Add more life to your car. Ground transportation for the Inside Winston Cup Racing crew, provided by Mark III Luxury Vans and Trucks, the official vans and trucks of NASCAR. Footwear provided by Simpson Race Products, makers of the Ground Effects line of motorsports footwear.